Good news for U.S. job seekers as employers ramped up hiring. Take a look at this. February's unemployment rate fell to 7.7% from 7.9%. It also added 236,000 jobs. That was better than expected. The jobless rate is now at a 4-year low, and most economists claim that 250,000 jobs per month are needed to reduce the unemployment. Austin Goolsbee is an economics professor at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, and I asked him if he was surprised by the figures and what this could mean for the economy.
I was surprised. I thought it would not be this strong. This was a pretty solid report. Across the board, you saw a lot of industries with job growth. You saw unemployment coming down. We still have this problem in the U.S. of the long-term unemployed. You've had a smallish group that's been out of work and searching for a job for literally years. And we're going to have to try to address that, but that's the weakest part. But overall, this is a very solid month.
A lot of times economists will talk about sort of critical momentum, if you will. In other words, having the ship really has turned and there's enough momentum going forward that it can kind of take care of itself without any further external shocks to push it forward. Are we there yet? Is the economy strong enough to stand on its own?
You know, I hope so, but I fear not. We've seen little increases in the growth rate of the economy, and consequently improvements in the unemployment rate in the job market, only to find either world economic events in Europe and various places or domestic events pull it back down to something much more modest. Here, you could see that same thing happen again. My fear is that we're just starting to finally get the growth rate in the U.S. back well above 2%, you know, maybe pushing 3%, and that now the sequester is going to kick in, slow the growth rate back down, and that by the summer, you know, we easily could be back to the circumstance that people say, oh, the recovery just seems so feeble. Why isn't the job market improving?
I'm going to take you back about 5 years ago when you worked with the president at that time, specifically on the national economic agenda. And of course, at that time, housing market was in very dismal state of disrepair. Today, it's very different. Today's numbers showed we created nearly 50,000 jobs just on the housing front alone. Do you believe that the housing market goes from a weakness in the economy, a drag on the economy, now to be really an area of growth and an engine of growth for America going forward?
Yes, I do, though I don't think we should exaggerate it in the following sense. Normally, housing is the most cyclical part of the economy. Housing broadly, construction, real estate, all of those together are about a third of a normal expansion when you come out of recession. Because we got overbuilt in the U.S., we were getting a big fat zero from that for multiple years, as you highlight. You know, first they were big negatives, and then they've just been sitting in the basement for years. We finally, in most of the markets, look like we've turned a corner. Prices are rising again. You've seen housing starts tick up. You've seen construction employment rise. But I really don't think we're going back to the go-go days of the 2000s when a housing bubble was creating record amounts of construction. I think that will be an engine of growth, just as it usually is, but it's going back to something that's more sustainable and is going to be more modest growing than it was in the 2000s. So anybody who's thinking like, oh, great, we can go back to what it was in 2006, I think that's misguided.
What areas of opportunity in the United States would you be studying for? I mean, what skill sets are going to be necessary going forward?
Well, I'm teaching the MBAs, and their interest is not unfounded, is centered on high tech and the high-level business services. I think you've seen pretty sustained growth in those areas, you know, a couple of blips with the internet bubble, but really for 25 years, high tech has been a huge expander in the U.S. If you look at high-level business services, that's been a big expander. Certainly the healthcare sector has been a sustained grower of the economy, and those three have been really big drivers. And so that's what usually the students I'm teaching, that's where they want to go, is into some of those.
We saw the fiscal cliff. We saw this cliff. We saw another cliff that recently went by called the government cuts or sequestration. How much of an impact is this going to have on the economy? And is the media maybe blowing this a little bit out of proportion?
They might have blown a little out of proportion, but I think it's going to matter if you get the Congressional Budget Office puts out a forecast of current law, what will it do to the economy? And their forecast matches what a lot of the private sector says, is that these cuts of the sequestration will knock 0.5 of a point, 0.6 of a point off the growth rate for the U.S. Now that matters. That's not as big as some of the other cuts might have been, but that does matter. You know, that might bring our growth rate back down below our productivity growth rate, and if that happens, unemployment is going to start going back up. So I think this is a fear, but you know, for people who said the sky's going to fall down and nobody's going to go to work the next day, those kind of predictions were overblown.